Welcome to the Voices of a Black Man. My name is CK James, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Troy Woods today. The Voices of a Black Man is a platform for Black men to be seen and heard for who they are, dispelling stereotypes that they're absent or silent, angry, and aggressive, but showing that Black men come from various backgrounds, have different experiences, and different dreams and aspirations in their lives. That they're men who happen to be Black. So today we're talking with Troy Woods, and he's going to tell us his story through his lens. Troy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you loud and
Excellent.
clear.
Excellent. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me here.
Thank you for being here. Could you tell the viewers, why is it important for you to be a speaker on the Voices of a Black Man?
It's a great question. I'm a person who always looks for opportunities to speak when it concerns topics like this because I know there are a lot of misrepresentations in society. I think you have an amazing platform to do that. And so when you extended the opportunity to come on here and to have this conversation, it was a no-brainer for me. I think these conversations need to be continually to be had, simply because a lot of people operate, for lack of better terms, out of ignorance towards our culture, our society. And I think having conversations like this just gives a chance for exposure and for people, even now in these times, to remotely connect and to
Mhm.
possibly continue to learn, which I think is the biggest thing that we all need to do is continue to learn each other, because we all live together. So that's why I wanted to come on here and have this conversation with you today.
Wow, wonderful. So let's learn about Mr. Troy Woods. Let's just dig right on in then.
Let's do
Uh,
it.
Tell us about a young Troy. Where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up?
I grew up in Washington D.C. That's where I was born. I attended school in Maryland most of my life. I went to private school, and I'll get into that a little bit more when we talk on why I definitely said private. Um, but it was a 4-year period in my life where I also lived overseas on the island of Guam. My stepfather was in the military, and so that was really my first life opportunity to be around people that didn't look like me, and to learn from cultures. And the thing that I really loved about that is, especially being a military kid and then being stationed in another U.S. territory, rather not country. Um, you are forced to learn how to deal. Even people that may not look like you, who back home maybe you may not have meshed as well because you guys are all over there in the military. Again, you kind of come together as a family. You begin again have these conversations. And so I grew up, like I said, most of my life except for 4 years I've been here in the Washington D.C. area. I attended single, from basically a single mom. She was married a couple of times, but the only people that I really knew as parental figures were my mom and my grandparents. They did their best, and honestly, I have no complaints about my childhood. There were some things that I would say, as a child, you don't really understand the impact when you become an adult.
Mhm.
Um, but I know my mom did the best she could out of love. And there were some structural things that I even deal with today as an adult that I just didn't have that reinforcement growing up, because I think my mom was trying to overcompensate for a lot of different things. But I played sports growing up. I've always loved being around people. I'm a creative. I picked up my first camera when I was a junior in high school, and have never put it down. And so I've grown up, here in DC. It's everybody's here, and sometimes I know that can kind of skew our reality a little bit. We're known as like Chocolate City, but everybody, you have all races, all walks of life here, live here. So I grew up with a pretty diverse background, but as I began to get older and travel for work, travel for business, you just start to get a sense of things are different in the world. Not necessarily bad, but just different.
Mhm.
And I think doing that, growing up around different people, it gave me the opportunity to really, I tell people all the time, someone from a different culture may talk to you one way, but they don't mean anything by it. That's just their culture. They're super direct. It comes off at, we sometimes interpret that as aggressive. But I grew up with so many different people types. I've been really good at kind of mitigating those situations, and trying to get the best from it. So, like I said, my childhood was great. I grew up around love. I will say that, despite different things that were going on in the family structure, I can never say I never felt loved. But it did put me on a different path toward fatherhood, which I'm sure we'll chat a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, so that was pretty much me growing up. Simple, nothing too crazy.
Yeah. Now, when you say DC, now one thing I know about DC, I know a couple people from DC. There's Northeast, Southeast,
Mhm.
Northwest. Where in DC did you grow up?
Northeast. I grew up between Benning Road and East Capitol Street and Minnesota Avenue. Anybody from the DC area knows exactly where that is. So yeah, I grew up in Northeast, but DC's only 10 square miles. So a lot of people think it's this huge place, but you can literally leave Maryland, drive through DC, and get to Virginia. You can do it in like 20 minutes. So it's not that bad.
Okay. Now, you talked about going to Guam. About how old were you when you spent your 4 years in Guam?
Ages 6 to 10. I was 6 to 10.
6 to 10. So very formative years, very
Yes.
impressionable years.
Yes. Absolutely. It amazes me today, and I think that gave me some perspective with my children as to what they can remember. At what ages, as a parent, you start asking a question: what ages does it really start to have an impact on children? And I think because I can go back and remember things from that period of time, kind of helped me now, because it's like 6 seems young, but even in my age now, I still remember that whole 4 years. So yeah, it was very formative years. It was a lot to learn culturally, but I really think that gave me a love for travel. Because when I was over there, we used to, in the military, they would do these things called hops, military hops, where you could, catch a military flight sometimes, and you can go to different places. It was like $20 back then. But, we were vacation. I lived in Guam, but we would vacation to Hawaii, the Philippines, Okinawa. I've been to South Korea. So I've been to those places and can remember different experiences. And back then we had pictures, the things we used to print out, not everything we just post on Facebook. So I have albums downstairs in the basement now that I can go to and actually recall some of those moments. So yeah, I was really blessed to experience those things. And I share some things with my son now. We live near a military base, and he'll see different planes, and I'm like, Dad, I flew in that before. Or, I'd had this crazy experience of we were going from, I think, the Philippines to Okinawa, I believe. It was on one of our vacation, and we took this plane called a Stratotanker. And I didn't know what it was at the time, but it's the airplane that refuels jets in midair. And so I was the only kid on the flight. And so they said, you want to come up in the cockpit? So I was like, all right. So they set me up there, put the headphones on, and I'm having a conversation with the pilots, but I didn't know my conversation was being broadcast to the whole plane. And so when we left, they said, well, we're about to go in the back and do something. So I'm like, all right. So I'm walking past everybody and walking past my parents, and we go down in the boom of the plane, and we're laying on this sheet of glass and like 30,000 feet up, and these jets just come out of nowhere. And I actually helped them to refuel the jets. And we got pictures of it and everything. And I tried on a flight suit. So it was crazy experiences like that, but it also helped me to understand, like, kids need to really see more than just the environments they grow up in to really understand what life is, and the world out there to the ways.
Yeah. That's one of the philosophies that I have. Is I'm a military brat as well. So
Okay.
I'm definitely, you're over here, and I'm like, I remember those things. Yes, Air Force and Army. So and I was in ROTC. So it's like, oh
Okay.
yes, I remember all of these things.
Okay.
But you see my face lighting up, like, yeah. But,
yeah. I felt, I was like, I think she understands what I'm saying, but I wasn't sure. That's cool.
I've been on the plane. I've helped refuel. I know exactly where you're talking about when you go down in the boom. I know all. Yeah, and it's amazing, and it's an experience to be had, definitely.
Yeah.
But one of my philosophies is that I think everybody should spend a year abroad
Mm.
somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it rounds you in a way that you don't just think things are just about you or just about where
Right.
you're from, and
Right.
you learn to appreciate some things, you learn how to understand other things better,
Absolutely.
in the sense that you talked about of being able to deal with a lot of different types of people, because
Right.
you look deeper than just what they presented to you. You
Absolutely.
look deeper into, or where they're from, is that part of their culture, different things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. I have this joke. I talk to my wife all the time. Like, our kids can't think that vacation is only Carolina and Florida. A lot of times we think that's traveling, but it's really it's a getaway. And I don't. If that's all you can do, that's all you can do. You do that, but when you go those places, you look for other experiences there. Don't just try to congregate around what you're comfortable with. And I think that leads into a bigger conversation of we tend to a lot of times just do what's comfortable, and
Mhm.
we don't really want to be uncomfortable. And a lot of times that's where the gold is. Is getting
Yeah.
in places and you stretch yourself, and you were uncomfortable today, but tomorrow that's your new norm. And so I think that's absolutely essential. And it's funny that you said that about spending a year abroad, because I did 4. Um, and I would say that's probably the most formative experiences that I've had in my life. Even though it was 4, even I've traveled, I've been to Italy for photography reasons and stuff like that. And it's just, you just want to go and embrace the culture and just see something different. And then when you come
Mhm.
back and you may live around those that are Italian or whatever, you can understand their heritage a little bit more. And I think it helps you to kind of sync up and just continue to learn from each other.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. I'm gonna go to this question. We're gonna come back to young
Okay.
Troy, but I got to go here because this is where the conversation is going.
Okay.
So when we look at society as a whole, do you think that that's something that's lacking right now? Is that we're not sensitive enough or understanding of each other's cultures and needs?
Absolutely. I believe, but I think a lot of it is systemic. Because, and I mean, we can go there if you want to, but I just think that when you look at how our communities are set up, and you look at even our communities that have food deserts, and like I said, I live here in the DC area, right? So you literally like can go up to Baltimore. Like, okay, so everybody that's watching, if you're not familiar with, when people say the DMV, that doesn't include Baltimore. It's not, it just Baltimore is Baltimore, and that's their preference for that. But if you can, I always extend it out to Baltimore. So like Baltimore down to Richmond, right?
Mhm.
Because on the other side of Baltimore, you got Delaware, Philly, New York, everything like that. But if you can literally drive through pockets, like it's literally on one side of the street, it looks one way. A couple blocks up, it looks totally different. I'm talking like $1 million homes over here and
Mhm.
projects over here,
Mhm.
and so I think a lot of that, like I said, as far as being systemic, a lot of it has to do um, with this classism, how things are just set up. Um, but I think it goes back to our willingness to accept it, because like speaking of projects, you know, it was never meant to be a permanent thing. And I think even though I speak out on so many different issues, I'm also hard on our own community, because I'm like, we have to do our part. Like, we can always look for ways to progress and advance our messages and our agendas. But at the same time, if we're not, you know, worried about teaching and breaking the cycle of, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations living in the projects, and everybody's cool with that, but then everybody's got the latest handbag or the Jordans and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
There's a lot of broken priorities there.
Mhm.
And I think when people congregate amongst themselves, they're comfortable and they're not willing to look outside to really see better,
Mhm.
to be mentored by somebody that doesn't look like them. you
Mhm.
know um I think everybody should do that. Like, even if you have a couple of different mentors, like, one of them shouldn't look like you. Like, you should always want to have somebody that's going to pull you into that room where they are. Like I've always, I have a buddy of mine. We used to go to this conference in Vegas all the time, this photography conference. And I've shared this to my page, so I know a lot of people will probably see this, but they'll get it. The conference at the time we were going, like probably back 2008, 2009, it was diverse, but it really wasn't diverse, And so this is going back to my experiences as a young child. Me and my buddy went together, and we were walking through the trade show area. And I'm only saying this because he brings it up, and if he sees this, he's going to laugh. That's when Facebook was just getting hot. I mean, everybody was on Facebook. And so people were coming up to me, "Are you Troy? Are you Troy? You Troy Woods?" And so that became the running joke with him. Like, he's like, "You're Troy Woods." Like, but I bring that up to say I've never been shy about engaging with people that didn't look like me. Yeah. On the flip side of that, when you go into a conference like that or just different spaces, you have to be comfortable with not seeing a lot of you. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us are not there. We withdraw and we don't walk in our own boldness. And just like you're there to learn, people will gravitate towards you because the people that are in sync with us living together as one, they'll want to learn about you like you want to learn about them. And a lot of times, if you're willing to take that step and be the first one in that space or one of the few in that space, you'll be surprised at how you'll personally grow because you were willing to be bold. And then you're given these opportunities that people will put you in front of their groups so they can learn from you. So I think it's all about being bold and taking those steps to just want to be better and just want to be uncomfortable. We got to get out of that.
So you bring up something, and I hate to have to go back, but I almost have to.
Okay.
So clarify for our viewers, because everybody doesn't know about Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Northeast D.C., is that primarily a Black community? Was it mixed community? What was it when you grew up?
Northeast is Black. Well, see, when I grew up, all of D.C. was Black, pretty much. You had your spots here and there. It's really become, I use the word diverse now. It's really become diverse now. Normally, when you talk about diversity, it's usually trying to be inclusive of us. Mm-hmm. But, when I came along so just to kind of put a time frame on it, I was in Guam from like 1981 to 1985. We came back, I think, either May or June of 1985. When we came back, that's when the crack era was hitting hard in DC. I mean, it was literally like you would turn on the news, even as a young kid. It's a shame to say this, but this is just what our reality was. You would turn on the news to see what the body count was from last night. I mean, it was that bad, right? And so DC as a whole was pretty much, I would say probably 95%, 96% people of color. I'm not even gonna say African American. I'll say people of color. Now, if I had to put it's weird now. Southeast, predominantly still Black. Northeast, it's mixing. Northwest is where it started. Northwest was always like uptown. That was like that was the affluent area. That was always known as the affluent area. So you literally could go from Northwest. You could be in Northwest and come down like Georgia Avenue or 16th Street, and it will run you right down to the monument. And that's what's funny is when you get on these big roads, you drive through sections of an area, and that's when you start to see change. So you would come up by Howard University on Georgia Avenue going uptown, and you would leave the Howard area, which was kind of lower income at the time. And then as you progressed up, you start going up to more Silver Spring, Maryland, which is on the other side of the DC line. But you would see that transition driving all the way up. So now I don't even know what the numbers are because I've lived in Maryland for so long. But let's just say we've had some Caucasian individuals walking their dog on Howard campus telling people that they need to move. So that's kind of the diversity we're at now. So it's transitioned even in my lifetime, which is, I'm 45 now. So over the last 30 years, it's really prices are through the roof. Mm-hmm. You know, I do a lot of work with one of the biggest event um, um, entertainment venues in the area, and they're trying to bring FIFA here for in a few years, and it's so much going on. The waterfronts have changed, so it's a whole different look now. But like I said, that we're here now, but 30 years ago, 35 years ago, it was literally it was a bad time for DC.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's transition,
Okay. Yeah.
and now that people have moved out into the local areas of Maryland and everything else like that. So
Got you. So I asked that question for this question.
okay,
If, because you had the opportunity to go somewhere else to see something different
okay,
that I'm sure has shaped your life to be comfortable with who you are and other people that don't look like you.
mm-hmm.
For the person who didn't have that chance or doesn't have that chance, then all they see is what's in their community. All they know is how do they, to your point, because I think it's a great point, and I want to make sure that our viewers catch it in a way that they maybe can have an action item here.
Right.
How do they embrace other ethnicities if that's not, if say I just stayed in
Right.
Northeast DC during the time that you were talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got diversification now, but if I came up during that era, I would have, I don't know how to act. I don't know how to act with other ethnicities because that's not what I'm interacting with as I grow up. So how do they do that?
So we're talking about how do they do that in current times, like right now?
Because we still have people right now in communities that are all either Black communities or person of color communities, right? Which means that there's other ethnicities, but they're people of color. There's no Caucasians there. They're just, this is all I know, right? And so when we talk about reaching out so that we can learn something different and we can continue to grow and not be complacent or not be comfortable where we are, how do we get uncomfortable and get ourselves in those spaces?
Well, I think now we have a very unique opportunity that I didn't even have growing up. That's the internet. The internet is a connector of everyone. So, a lot of people don't want to be socially shamed for trying to grow. We have this thing in our community where we call people sellouts because they do want to get better, or they talk a certain way, or they grew up in Northwest versus Northeast or something like that, or whatever. I would say first the person's going to, because if the person doesn't have a desire to want more, none of this is going to matter. But if a person has a desire to want to be more, to want to learn more, to want to learn more about the world they live in, they can start with the internet. That's something you can do in the privacy of your home. You can start to learn. You can get on YouTube. You can look up for every action, there's an equal reaction. There's an opposite. There's a yin, there's a yang. So if you're normally watching, maybe your thing is, okay, so I'm really into yard work now, right? So maybe it starts as simple as something like maybe, a couple of your favorite guys that you watch on YouTube on how to do your lawn, maybe they're Black guys, right? Maybe you start watching some guys that are white. Maybe you start watching some other people. It's not that they're going to teach you how to do the yard differently, but sometimes like you can just hearing someone else's speech and even how they interact amongst each other. So when you hear them interact with you, you don't maybe take it personal, or you maybe, you're able to just understand different viewpoints, education, self-development, books, anything that you can get your hands on that could expose you to another culture. We have it like right here. You don't even need a computer. Like everybody has a phone that's really your passport to the world. You can literally, no matter what situation you're in, I think that's the beautiful thing about music. You can put your headphones on and you can zone out to whatever genre of music that you want to listen to. And the internet is no different when it comes to learning about other cultures. I give y'all a insight into something. One of the things that I love to do, I'm extra, I'm a creative. I just got stuff happening in my office with all these lights and stuff. I'll really cut my lights down. I'll go on YouTube. And when I just want to mellow out, I have two screens. I'm editing pictures on one screen, and on another screen, there's this guy. He's a white guy. He has these dogs. He goes snow camping. Like out in the snow, 2 feet of snow, and they camp for like a day or two, and he goes through his meal prep and all that. I have no idea why that's like just will calm you down, but he doesn't look like me. I've never wanted to really do that, but it's cool to just see, because I'm wondering, like, they got to be someplace like in the Midwest or something like that, because you're looking at the scenery around them, and it makes you start to wonder, it's a lot of the country I really haven't seen yet. So I think that doing different things like that starts to open up your mind. You know, a lot of times we're so used to these buildings and skyscrapers and stuff, but we don't ever take the time to appreciate like Idaho or just places where you can drive and just scenic, God's country, you know, just go out and just look at everything out there. So I think it starts with the internet. I think that's how you start to pique your interest and start to find out what it is that you're drawn to. It might be snowboarding, it might be skiing, and it might be yard maintenance, it might be whatever. And then you can start looking at different influencers out there, or just people sharing their story. Maybe it's another dad out there, another mom out there. They don't look like you, but they have the same, maybe struggles as you're having or something, but you can connect with them because you guys share a common bond in the topic that you're researching on YouTube. And I think that's where you start to learn how to relate to other people. It has to be a common bond there. And from there, you take that shared experience and you just, again, race starts to go down, because you guys will always come back to that common message. And so you take that, and then you can start to grow and learn your relationships from there.
Yeah. And that's not just for a Black person or a person of color. That's for any ethnicity can do that.
Correct. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of things we say seem specific to us. Yeah. And just real quick, I want to say this, because I've mentioned this before in our current issues in society and everything. We talk about racism a lot right now. And one of the things that I've always, and it's because I've been able to be around so many different types of people, I've always, and I tell my friends, hey man, unless they just say something really just off the track, like you just know where they're going, ask yourself, is it racism or is it ignorance? A lot of times we look at ignorance as just so much a negative connotation, right? Like, you call me ignorance, you just don't know. And it's because you've lived in a certain bubble for so long. You've only been around yourself. And like you said, that could be Black people, white people. It could be our Latino community. It could be so many different people. You're just used to your own. So you're ignorant about other things going on. It doesn't mean that you're racist, So that's where all of these different pieces come together, I think. And we start to learn, but it's you got to be willing to find that common foothold and then grow from there with the next person.
I think that's a good point. And we've gotten to a place where we're just sensitive about everything, right?
Everything.
And so we're emotional and ready to go off. I don't care which side you're on, who you are. We're just ready to go off because tensions have been so high for so long.
Right.
When you look young Troy to Troy now, I won't say older Troy because you'll get older. I'll just say to Troy now.
It's all good. I'm getting gray hair, but go ahead.
I am too. Say, I'm not far behind you. So to where you are today, what do you attribute to who you are? 2 questions. I'm going to put them together because I think that answering and they'll go together. What do you attribute to who you are today? And your kind of morals and character that you have?
Wow, that's a great question. My grandfather played a pivotal role in who I am today. And it's funny, man, when you start talking about our families and our histories, and we're prideful people, not pride in a negative way. Our parents always told us, I don't care what happens with your brothers and sisters in the street, y'all stick together out there, we'll deal with that when we get home. We've never wanted to we've never been a people to just arbitrarily just air our stuff out in the street. So growing up, I really didn't know this, but my immediate parental circle had gone through several rounds of divorce. My grandparents, both of them, when my grandma and grandpa were remarried, so they you know, my mom, you know. So I, even though I knew that growing up, they still surrounded me with love. My grandfather um, was a pastor, right? So for my whole life. So when I left to go overseas, he was pastoring, and my mom will help with the church. So I was in church like when we came back, I was in church like every Sunday, right? And it was a small church, it was probably 20 people, whatever. And so I grew up, that's what I grew up with. And so I always knew my moral compass always worked, right? I mean, I was a kid. Of course, I did little things growing up, my teenage years and then my young adult years, but my moral compass was set kind of early, right? And it's like when you go to these amusement parks, you get in the cars that you can drive, but it's that single track, and it won't let you go too far left or the right. I had that track growing up, and it was attributed to my grandparents. That being said, through the different challenges that I've had in adulthood, my belief in God and Jesus Christ, and just having examples of people who've made it, helped me to really never be in a doom and gloom situation. Because even in my adult years, I've been through some things that, and I'm always referencing my grandparents. Growing up, it was fine, but when you get to your adult years, that's where it's like, okay, having dad's advice would have been really good right now. You know what I mean? Because my grandfather passed away several years ago, but he would have been on 45. He'd have been like 95 maybe, so that is a huge, what's that, a 50-year difference, so that's even though he loved me and he gave me my love for cutting the grass and he did so many things that were ingrained in me today, he still couldn't be there for those day-to-day things. There was still that disconnect. But his moral standard and the things that he taught me, he said, never let nobody wash your face. And I'm like, what does that mean? And basically, never let anybody do more for you than you're willing to do for yourself, and so those little nuggets that he would drop and have really helped keep me somewhat centered from young Troy to adult, because they tried to protect me from a lot of family secrets, a lot of different things going on growing up. And I went through a rough time in my late 20s dealing with that, because when your identity structure has changed overnight and what you thought was one thing is really something else. And for me, and I'll say it, because it's part of my platform, is, I found out who my biological father was when I was 27, I believe. And he was already passed away. So for me, it was a double whammy, because, all right, you telling me this, but I can't go back and talk to him now, and she'll be like, you need to go do it. I have biological sisters out there that I've never met, but I've been so sensitive to where I am. I know, and this is why family secrets are so bad. I know the impact. If I show up, they may know, you just never know. People may know, people know things and they won't even say anything. But I've been so sensitive and blessed with where my life is now. I don't want to mess up anybody else, because you're so worried about, you show up and say this, they might be like, oh, great. But then it shatters their whole view of the man that they knew. And so that's the type of things that we really walk around with. It's the type of things that I deal with. It's the type of things, the conversations that I want to make sure to have with my children as they grow up, because kids can deal with a lot, but we owe them the truth. You know what I mean? Because if you let somebody grow up in a lie, the damages start as ripples, but then they become tidal waves. That's how it starts. It starts all small, but as you grow older, the waves get bigger, 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 because you start to expose the gaps and areas that are missing. And pretty soon it just overtakes you, and you can't really deal with it. So I think you have to start with these things now, and just really kind of deal with them.
Almost attack it head on. And because
Yeah,
those small ripples you can get over, they never become those tidal waves if
and
you
never
attack
become
it.
the title way. Exactly. Yeah, you gotta start and deal with it head on. I mean, I still deal with that. I have my moments. I've been blessed with an amazing family, and I still have my times where I think about it. And my grandparents are gone, my mom is gone, my biological dad's gone. My brother's father, who is like dad to me, he'll always be like dad to me. He's gone. So I
Mm,
that generation has passed on,
yeah.
and so I've always looked at like my generation, our generation. We're like the bridge generation for a lot
Mhm.
of different things. Like how we carry this torch now to the next generation is, I would say, our generation is one of the most important
Mhm.
because there are so many things that we're at the age where people are trying to push out the old school and the way that things used to be. And we're like the last generation for that. And so
Mhm.
if we don't instill those things now into our families, into our societies, we already see how things are starting to look and change, and people are trying to mold things to fit their level of comfort today. Um, and it all starts with not attacking things head on, and you let it go. You let it go to the place. All right, now let's just make room for this. Now we got this
Mhm.
new thing. Now we can't really define it. We just let it, put it in there, and it's the new norm. Everybody just accept it, and we just
Mhm.
keep kicking the can down the street, and we don't ever deal with the issues of the heart and what people are really dealing with. And I think a lot of things that we're seeing taking place now, the biggest thing is love. Um, the one thing that I'm not comfortable with is you can no longer disagree with someone without that person saying you hate them. And that's a really dangerous spot to be in.
Mhm.
I can love you, but I might not disagree with what you're doing.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean it doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean that I hate you. But I think that that's just where we are now as far as trying to figure out, it's up to us to really make that message stick,
Yeah.
that you can love someone, and in that love you can still express your opinions to them. Even they don't have to take the opinion. But
Yeah.
now we're muting a generation, telling people you can't talk. If you say something, we're gonna put you over here in this canister. And this is a really bad spot to be in right now. So hopefully
Yeah.
through this platform here that you have, other things that are going on, hopefully we can continue to get the message out, and let people speak what's on their heart. So just the conversation can continue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I can't help but think, as you talked about that so profoundly, I can't help but think that that's part of what's happening in America today is that there these little ripples that never were attacked head on are now becoming the tidal waves
Yeah.
that we're dealing with.
Yeah. Absolutely. So as it relates to, we're talking about black men here, and
Mhm. Mhm.
I tell everybody that has Netflix that they should go watch 13th, which talks about, it basically talks about our prison system, and it goes from slavery to basically the new slavery. I've always been a person that says, hey, if you do something wrong, got paid for it, but I think you should be able to be rehabilitated. Um, I don't think you should lose your right to vote. I think that's part of the plan, is
Mhm.
if we can get you in the system, then we strip your right to vote. I think there's just so many things that we have to deal with as men, and we can't just keep saying I'm okay. That's where the ripples start. I'm all right, come on, have a bad day. I'm all right, no, I'm good. We're we're afraid to show emotion because we don't want to come off as being soft, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but as long as we keep saying I'm all right and we don't deal with it, um, it's going to continue. I mean, you can, like, I look at the generation now where, like, I'm the type, like, let's talk about tattoos, right? I like tattoos, but I've always been the type, like, I'm not going to get until I'm at an age now I won't do it. But when I was younger, I got a couple. Um, I knew not to get it below my sleeve line
Mhm. Mhm.
because I knew if I walked in and I'm going for a job or I'm going for whatever, then people have their opinions. And I wanted to be a clean slate. Unfortunately, we live in this world where people want to say, "Oh, I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." Yeah, that's cool, but until you can create your own money, until you can create your own way of being, you're going to be subjected to someone else's system, and that's okay. But you have to learn how to play by the rules. We had this rebellious thing going on where we just want to do us. You know, they want to pass certain laws like with marijuana and different things like that, and you think just because things are legal that you should do it, and you don't understand. And I've been in these environments where guys come into work, they smell like it, and the guy's like, "Go home," and you're thinking it's legal. What I do wrong? But they don't want that around their clients. You understand what I'm saying? So
that's not the image.
it's not the image, and the structure is off. We're not doing enough of teaching, because we're out here, everybody's trying to earn a living, everybody's trying to make money, everybody's trying to get it, and at the same time we're not working with our children, because it starts with them, and then when they become older, it gets a little bit more out of control if they don't really have that foundation in there. And again, these are all things going back to the ripples becoming tidal waves. Start when they're a kid. My son's a preteen now, so you start working with stuff now. If we wait till he's 15, 16 to address things, it might be too late. You know what I mean? Because now they're starting to feel their own. They're starting to get that size on them. They're starting to feel like they can do whatever. Yeah. And you've kind of lost your influence. Again, that's when it starts becoming a tidal wave. And then he leaves the house, and then he goes into society. And the morals and values that we've placed in our children is what society has to deal with. Because they leave your home. So what you fail to do, society will have to compensate for. You know what I mean? It's not going to necessarily affect you as the parent, right? And let's talk about like our young black boys. Like what we fail to do at home, society is they have another way of dealing with that. Like your failure here is going to show up in society. It might not show up in your home. You know what I mean? And so again, ripple to wave, so that's where my focus has been. And that's where I'm really, even though I have, my business, that's where things are kind of going, because you can see it. I mean, it's so obvious, when you go out in the stores and you just see it with our young men. It's like, come on, guys, y'all got to get better. If you're going to do your hair like that, keep it together. Don't just look like you don't care, And so that's been my message for the last few years.
Yeah. So now let me ask you this question.
Sure.
When did you first realize that you were not just a young man, but a Black man? And what did that mean to you?
When I started working, because I did some years at George Washington University, which was very, the demographics mirrored my private school demographics. So that's what I said. My mom did the best she could to try to keep me in a mixed environment around different things. With that being said, when you get out of that into the real world and you go into places that aren't as diverse, and you start noticing those promotions not coming, or how people talk to you, or it's little slick things that people say, and how they talk to you versus somebody else, and that's where you are one. And then people will say things, and you're like, is that ignorance, or you really something we need to discuss? So it was the workplace for me. I grew up, but when I started working, probably almost day one, I had a temp job, and then right after that, I got into like federal contracting, like on the IT side. So I did like 18 years there, 17, 18 years there. And I've always been around that structure and when you're a contractor for the government, it is very networked.
Yeah.
Meaning you're there because they want you there. You're not just going to walk in, fill in an application. It's very political. It's very, there are a lot of different layers to it. And when you start seeing people get promotions over you that are not as qualified and not um, as polished or what have you, you're like, what's this about? When you start seeing, this is what really got me, was when I started seeing hiring practices where I love our vets. I love what they do for our country. But when you start seeing how the government will open up a job for like a day and close the opening down, and then somebody's hired, like, when did y'all interview somebody? Oh, okay. And so you start really seeing, okay, this is how y'all doing it. Okay, so I would say it started there. Not that was the biggest experience for me, is just through employment, because now I'm being an entrepreneur, it's a different thing. But I would say it started mainly through my work experiences and just dealing with that for about 17 years, and just kind of, I'm not complaining. I mean, I get it, but that was my first taste of it. Oh,
Gotcha.
and the police being pulled over. That was another one. I would not ride my motorcycle to Virginia. Let's go to, nah, where we going? No, I'm not going over there. I've been followed on my way to work on my motorcycle. I've been followed for like 20 miles. It's crazy. I mean, it's just things that you start dealing with, and you're like, it becomes the norm, and you just learn how to work around it. So those two experiences: work, police.
So I'm coming back to that. I'm not going to let that go. Okay. But before we come back to that, private school, Georgetown, and you talked about your mom providing the best and making sure you're in the best situations. Was it because of the area that you lived in that she put you in private school?
No. Maybe. I went to, so it was George Washington University as far as college. Okay. When we came back, there was a school literally on the other side of the woods from us. I think my mom just always wanted to try to give me the best, right? And so she's like, I want to put you in private school. For her, it was a sheltering thing. She tried to keep me sheltered. I'm grateful for it, but I realized how much money she spent. I'm like, that was crazy. But part of it, I believe it was maybe overcompensating for some of the things and family structure that had happened, with the marriages and different things like that, to try to overcompensate over here. So what's going on over here won't affect you as much. But what that did was, I love my mom, but one of the most devastating things that happened, and she did not mean for this to happen, we never had a chance to talk about this, was that in her quest to do that, it really gave me a bad concept of managing money, because it was like, I don't know where she getting this money from for private school. Then I realized my grandparents were helping. I'm like, I appreciate it, but is it that serious? So it gave me this thing of, I always had to have the best, and I was never the type to go out here, the cars, the rims, not that. It's just, I'm probably in one of the most dangerous fields to have that type of taste. When I'm in IT, computers, cameras, everything, like, it's got to be the best. So I get that from my mom. She, I love her, but it was never like, I never really had to. I wasn't overly spoiled, but my mom always made sure that all my needs was taken care of. And when she did give me something, it was great quality. It wasn't like it was 30 of them, but it was like, when she got me a pair of shoes, it might be a pair of Jordans. Or when she did this, it was a nice watch or X, Y, and Z. So I grew up with this whole thing of, what? I mean, you're supposed to have the best, right? Like, even if you got to wait, get the best. You know what I mean? So it kind of threw me when I became an adult, got rent mortgages and stuff like that. It's like, it don't really work like that. Let's see what Walmart got, so, but yeah, that's I would say that was the biggest thing for me, is, she just wanted in private school. I mean, college, I would say, remember the college scandal that came up recently with all the parents getting their kids in school? And one of the things was so they can sit around a country club and say, "Oh, my daughter's goes here, my son." I think my mom had a little bit of that, as far as wanting to say my son goes to probably one of the most expensive schools in DC that I'm gonna have to pay for later, Mom. Thanks. But I think that was her thing that she wanted me to experience. I'm super grateful for it. Should I have been there? No. I mean, I'm grateful, but it was, when you look at the cost back in '93,
Yeah.
it was still real expensive.
Mm.
I mean, she just did it to give me the best, and I think so she could kind of overcompensate in a couple of areas for some things. So that was a long way to answer that question, but
No, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. And I think that we learn as adults that sometimes we compensate not necessarily for the child, but to help us get along. And then
yes,
sometimes it is for the child, right, too, to kind of help them along, or we think that they feel a certain way. So maybe
right,
I should do this or do that.
right,
I want to turn this to 300 Fathers
okay.
as an initiative that you have.
Hmm.
And does that come out of just your experience as a kid, wanting to have that relationship with your father, and then being denied in a lot of ways of having that relationship, even when you found out who he was? Where does 300 Fathers come from, and what is it all about?
So, to answer your question first, yes, it when I got married, I just fell in love with fatherhood before we even had children. Just the opportunities. I look at not just fatherhood, but parenting as a way to possibly correct things that maybe didn't go right with you. It doesn't mean that you give your kid everything. It doesn't mean that you don't give them anything. It just means that, for us, the mission is more intangible. You know, it's not. It's about our presence with our children. Because as men, we're bred. We're gonna go get it. You know, I'm gonna work. I'll work 2 jobs. I'll travel. I'll be gone all the time. You know, that's just we and we're raised like that, and that's how society has treated us. But a lot of times it goes back to what you just said. We're chasing our own wants and desires. Like, the telltale sign is when you go back to that house you grew up in, it's like, we grew up in this small thing. Like, we don't remember that as kids. We remember experiences. We don't remember, like, my dad had a lot of money. You know what I mean? And then even the kids that do have that, look at how they're turning out. Like, dad is never, he gives us all this money, but he's always gone. So they got all the nice cars. They're out at all the parties. They're experimenting and doing all these different things. So 300 Fathers was founded as a platform for fathers, stepfathers, and father figures to support them in remaining active in the lives of their children. And if they aren't, to encourage them to get active in the lives of their children. Everyone wants to know, all right, if it's 300 people, at 301, are you closing the door? What are you doing? So 300, it's a number, but it's more of a meaning. It comes from two different places. One is from the Bible, Gideon's army, when it was cut down from 10,000 to 300. And then one of my favorite movies was 300 with the Spartan army. Again, they had 10,000 back at home, but they sent 300 out. So I thought it was really funny how those two numbers lined up. It's more of a warrior's approach towards fatherhood, right? So with 300, it's a mindset. It's more of how we engage and attack our bodies, you know, because a lot of dads are just letting it go. And, you know, we're having children later in life now. And so as they're getting active, you're getting inactive. And it's a lot of different things. Our food supply is absolutely disgusting. It's horrible. It's harming us. And so we have a health component built into it. We also have this personal development. What I found out is that when I would start having these conversations with fathers and hear their stories, it was heartbreaking, because I can't sit up here and say I had the absolute worst childhood, because I did not. But I'm hearing these dads that are sharing stories like, you know, me and my kid's mom didn't work out, and now I can't see my son because she's upset that I'm with somebody else now, and she's using my kid as a pawn, and all these other issues that, you know, we deal with as men and Black men, you know, as fathers. I wanted to build a community where we could address that, you know, where we could build a safe house. All right, man, what's going on with you? You know, and like I tell people, my kids are now 8 and my son just turned 11 last week. That's all I got is fatherhood. Like I can help you from what it's like when your wife or your girl is pregnant up until 11. That's all I got. 12, I'm not there yet. So I need another man for that. I need another father ahead of me who has children that are older that can say, look, man, this is what's going on. So it's about setting up a system to have people in place through the whole step of the journey, because these kids don't come with manuals. They don't. We're figuring it out, and depending on your social economic status, everything else, what you have access to, it changed. Fatherhood looks different for everybody, but the one thing that has remained constant is us being there for our children. You know, are you willing to downgrade your house? Are you willing to maybe not push the Mercedes, but maybe push the Maxima or whatever, if it means you can spend more family time? We're spending too much time trying to impress people that aren't even in our household, and it's taken away from our families. We can really survive with a lot less. And I don't mean survive like barely making it. I mean, if we were really to put priorities on different things, our lives will look different. Like for me, I don't need a big house. I like a huge, like I don't need to upgrade every 6 years. I need a new house. How about we stay here, remodel this one, do what we need to do, and that all the extra money, let's just take the kids on vacations and other travel and just go see stuff. We put so much money in cars and houses that we don't take our kids anywhere. Disney, oh no, that's too expensive. You got a $2,000 purse in the room that you just got. So it's where we, you know, it's where we place things. Like Disney to me has always been an experience since I was a kid. I still love Disney. I don't know how Walt did it, but like I knowingly will pay a lot of money just because every experience is a lifetime thing. And I think even if it's not Disney, we need to focus on those things. So that's our initiative, is just trying to help us to remain focused on what matters, to provide a platform for fathers to talk, to share, to come together, to grow, to physically get better. We're competitive beings by nature. So we're adding in a little, you know, that competitive nature. Because, you know, you show up at a barbecue and John over here, 6-pack, you know, cut up, he 52 and you 35, and it's just not looking like that for you. You're gonna like, what did John do? You know what I mean? So that's all it's about, just being better men and being better fathers, and learning our children. And our children are faced with so many different things today. They're inundated with messages all day. Nick, the one thing I will say this, and I was gonna make a Facebook post, but I'm gonna share it here with you. I'm really disappointed with like Nickelodeon, right? They have 2 shows. One is called Game Shakers and one is called Young Dylan. And I look at how they're portraying black men in these shows. You know, on Game Shakers, they got Kel from Keen and Kel, the Good Burger dude. You know, he's one of the kids' father. He's a rapper. You know what I mean? He's always got on the blinged out clothes and jewelry. And he's always got these 2 guys around him that are yelling all the, I mean, they talk like they yell all the time. And it's a bunch of white kids on the show. And I'm looking like, y'all really gonna let them portray you like that? Like, you don't really understand that these are the messages. We're more than rappers. Yeah. You know what I mean? We don't always have to be loud. We don't always, but this is how they're portraying our father figures on TV. You know what I mean? And so when middle America looks at this and they've never met a black person, oh, this Nickelodeon, they're a great network. This must be how black guys are. And then when they go out and see it, stereotype. And then when they see someone else, it's like, I don't know how to take you. You know what I mean? So that's kind of a really complex answer, but our mission is changing. It adjusts. Right now, we're dealing with the social things that's going on, and a lot of the anger that a lot of men are feeling, a lot of the frustration. Our kids are getting these messages now. So how are we going to help these circumstances and help them to grow, not go through it, but to grow through it, and to show that we have to present another side of the coin. We have to be able to do that. So that's kind of what our mission is right now.
You hit something, and that was the next question that I was going to ask you. Is kind of where you ended here. Is how do you deal with the anger? How do you deal with the aggression, especially in the times that we're in right now? When someone follows you for 20 miles for no reason, when you're seeing the injustices that you're seeing for no reason, right? There nothing called for those things to happen. You're just doing what you need to do every day, living your life, trying to take care of your family, and these injustices are taking place.
Mhm.
How do you as a Black man deal with that anger that you have and rage on the inside, because you don't want to be portrayed as the angry or aggressive Black man, right? and
Right.
and feed into that stereotype.
So when I stopped riding motorcycles when my son was born, just because I didn't want him to grow up wanting to do it just because daddy was doing. I mean, we did it to the limit, racing, traveling, going out of the country, etc. Um, so all this was happening before I had children, and the reason I framed this answer like that is because um, during this time I had a security clearance. So that my security clearance helped me several times because there could you almost had and not just as a Black man, but just anyone who had different levels of clearances, your life had to be above reproach. Like you can't get caught up in what that's the last thing I needed to do was have a confrontation with a cop who could then when they flag it, yeah, now forget a ticket and going to jail. I just lost my job. And then you can't, it's hard to get back. So that was really like kind of like a safeguard for me. I always thought about I've I've had stuff happen in past relationships where I was baited to do something, to respond out of anger. Had a friend right beside me who said, if that was me, I'd have did X, Y, and Z. I don't know how you sitting over here and you just letting this go. My security clearance. I said, man, if I do this, I lose everything. You know what I mean? And because I'm a Black man, I just fit right into the stereotype, right? So that was a safeguard for me. However, now I find myself angry, and you shouldn't do this, but on social media. And it's not just random people that have an opinion that you don't even know. It's people that I've known from social media, being honest, for like years. And you see these opinions coming out. And I'm like, really? That's how you really feel? And it's almost like now we're conditioned to you always have to, when you have a business, you can't speak out on social media. You can't do this because if people think you're the angry Black guy, they're not going to want to do business with you. They're not going to do this. So you got to always just don't get political. Don't talk about nothing. Just do. And I think for me, it started earlier this year because now everything rises and falls on leadership. When your top is acting a certain way, it comes down. Are these new issues? Absolutely not. But people have the unction to do it publicly now and think that there's no repercussion. I tell my wife, oh, she was like, I can't believe you said that. Like, I've been deleted, blocked, everything. I said, the interesting thing is when you have these discussions with people that are not of color and you go into it, I always approach these social conversations not from a place of anger, but from a place of knowledge, right? And it amazes me when you talk from knowledge, it frustrates people more because they're talking from emotion or they're talking from ignorance because they just don't know. So I could be boiling, like I say, I could be fish grease hot, but I always make sure to come from a place of knowledge because if I come from a place of anger, see, we knew it. Look at him, angry Black dude. So I always try when I speak out on things, I always try to come from a place of knowledge. And I'll give you a chance to, hey, look, I don't know if you understand, but when you said this, this is how it's interpreted. So I'll give you a chance to adjust your course. But if you double down on it, that's a different conversation. And so social media has been good because it's put those people out, but it's also allowed to galvanize people that are like-minded to where you are, even if they don't look like you. Like I forged more relationships with, my Caucasian brothers and sisters and, my Latino community who were like, thank you so much for speaking on this because we just didn't know. And so now they want to have these conversations. And so that helps to subdue things because I know, again, going back to my childhood and being exposed to other people, everybody's not like this. This is a select few who feel empowered during this time in history. But I know X, Y, and Z over here, they've never displayed that to me. So as long as X, Y, and Z are doing that, I'm not going to put that on humanity. I'll just treat you how you're acting in this situation and we'll address it accordingly. But I'm not going to lump everybody into the same thing. So I've always tried to keep a level of balance when it comes to my anger over these social issues and then understanding my children are watching. So how they're going to react and, and it's got to be done through conversation. So that's really helped me to manage a lot.
So with your children, it's more role modeling for them.
Correct. Absolutely. Especially for my son, because, my daughter, that's my girl, but I know I'm gonna have to have conversations with my son. He's going to wonder, why are you having these conversations with me? It's because I know the world out here is waiting, and unfortunately we have to tell our young girls too, but especially our young Black boys, man, if you go out here and get pulled over, your job is to get home. I don't care if you know that you're innocent and then just have your stuff ready, put it on the dashboard, pull everything out, license, registration, insurance, put all that stuff on the dashboard, roll all your windows down, do everything, and just sit there. Never travel with more than 2 or 3 people in the car. All these conversations we have to have to get our kids home. You know what I mean? And because that's the world we live in. So that's when I'm out with them, I'm trying to be mindful of that when we're driving, road rage. I mean, I've had people, even white people, just give you the finger. I'm like, what did I do? Like, and I'm like, my daughter's in here, don't say nothing, So, it's role modeling. It definitely is role modeling.
What is it becoming a father? So deciding to get married and then have a family. I hear you saying that getting married is a responsibility, having a family is a responsibility. Absolutely. And as a Black man, getting married and having a family, what was on your mind from a responsibility standpoint then and even now?
To have my children not have to start at zero. To build something that they could take and run with. Or, at least put them in a position to let them know it doesn't always have to be the path that they want to lay out here for you. You can own some stuff. You can run a business. You can work for somebody. You could do whatever. You can do what you need to do. Kelly and I, we've always been kind of laser focused on family. Most people don't notice, like our media company, like I'm a photographer. So most photographers name their company after them, right? Like, most people say, oh, why isn't it Troy Woods Photography? Well, Troy Woods is not going to be here forever. You know what I mean? And so I wanted to leave something for our children if they wanted to do it. The weird thing for us is my wife's a makeup artist. I'm a photographer. We met at a photo shoot. So it's kind of like yin and yang, right? On our honeymoon, we came up with our children's names and named the business that. So my business is Clark Bailey Media. My son's first name is Clark. My daughter's middle name is Bailey, right? And I did that because I wanted them to be able to say, that's mine, or that's dad and mom did this for us. So for me, we've kind of always thought about it and then just did it. I'm a big guy on branding. I don't ever want to be personally I'll be the face of it if I have to, but I don't want it to be just about me. Even with 300 Fathers, even with the media company, it's about putting a different message out there and telling a story. So our children, it's a huge responsibility being a father. Like, I'm just disappointed when I see men not even trying to live up to that responsibility, and you think this little kid is not going to grow up and be a man. You're sadly mistaken. You need to do. You got 18 years. They're going to be an adult much longer than they're going to be a child. You know what I mean? So I take that responsibility seriously. I'm not perfect by any means, but I do try to keep it in the forefront of my mind that stuff that I do, things that I say, things that I build, whatever, is one day my children may have to answer for that, good and bad. You know what I mean? So I just it kind of helps to keep me, you know, centered, I guess is the best way to say.
Hopes and fears for your children as they grow up and become adults. What are your hopes and fears?
My hopes um is that they recognize and walk in their true potential. Um, One thing that I've learned as a father is one of our jobs is to identify the potential in our children and then set them on the path to maximize that.
Mhm.
And so my hope is that they walk in their full potential. My fear is that our society gets worse. Um, that that's that's a hope and a fear. You know, I'm not gonna put my kids in a box. I just want them to be able to sit at the table and pick where do you want to go. Not okay, you got to do this.
Mhm.
And whatever that is, be the best you can be at it. Be who God called you to be. Um, but my fear is that we won't grow, and I think
Which
our
means
kids will be
what?
okay. Like we'll continue to be divisive. We'll continue to look like we're going backwards. You know, as far as children not thinking, the children that maybe don't have the parental guidance, you know, I'll speak towards them. My fear is that they'll grow up and don't think that there is hope. You know, that's a big fear for them. Okay, my mama did this, my grandmama did this, so we this is what we're gonna do too. Um, that's my fear for them is that they don't think there's gonna be hope. So we got a lot of work to do, but
Mhm.
I'm pretty confident that we're gonna get there.
At the end of the day, what's your mark on the world? What's your legacy?
Wow. Um, Fatherhood, simple. Like beyond my two. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
I want this to spill over into the community because I think um, fatherhood is not just about we 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 narrow it down to our children. You know how you hear about you go into these you might go into a foreign land, you might have these tribes and villages. There's always a chief.
Yeah.
That's the father. You know, that's
Mhm.
the example setter. All those are not his children, but he's
Mhm.
the chief. I want this message to spill out into our communities so we can develop our future leaders. It all starts at home. I don't care what you do in life, politics, whatever it is, it's going to start here. And this message of fatherhood is, I think, is the spring. And don't get me wrong, moms are amazing. I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
they just built different. You know what I mean? They're built innately with these things, and they're expressive beings, and they're able to get those emotions out. Man, we need work. You know what I mean? To understand the honor that we walk in and to treat each other with the respect, first of all, but to become willing to become a father for your community, an example setter, willing to tell us a kid, hey man, love you. I don't know who you are, but you might want to try to do X, Y, and Z. It might get you a little better result. You
Mhm.
know, if I can help you
Mhm.
in any way, let me know. Not to criticize him, but just to do that. That's what I want my legacy to be, is that he was somebody that cared about the generation coming up.
Mhm. Mhm. This has been wonderful, a great time. I've got some quick rapid fire questions for you. I don't know
Okay.
if you're ready for them.
Oh Lord.
Um,
I thought that was the rapid fire. Let me get a drink of water.
it's just a fire. It's just fire.
Go ahead, shoot.
So these are simple. I promise you, they're gonna be simple.
Okay.
Favorite food?
Ooh, ice cream.
What kind of ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip.
Mint chocolate chip.
Yep.
Okay. Favorite song?
You gonna ask me this right after DMX and Snoop performed last night?
All right. I saw that. I saw that.
That's a tough one because I like music. I can't. I
No
literally,
matter what are we putting on?
if I'm working out, it's gonna be hip hop.
Okay.
Probably
Okay.
with me, some. I really like '90s hip hop.
Okay.
I think that was the best era, you know. So I'm gonna go with some '90s hip hop more than likely.
Okay. All right. So let me say top three artists then.
Top three artists. Uh, Snoop, um, Biggie. Um, I like Ross, like Rick Ross. That's my guy right now. So as far as R&B group, then you got the groups. Lord Jesus, you got the Totals, the what? I mean, that's my era. That the Jagged Edge,
Yeah.
that whole
Yeah.
Boys to
Yeah.
Men, that whole. You know what? Boys to Men is probably one of Boys to Men is one of my favorite. If I'm mellowed out, just chilling, probably them. If I need to do something aggressive, riding on a mountain bike or working out, something hip hop.
Okay. Okay. Fair. I'll take it. I'll take it. Favorite destination or vacation spot?
Favorite destination. Can I just say cruising?
Okay.
Cruising.
Is this it's a particular type of boat like sailing or just regular cruise
Oh,
ship
it's
or
very specific. Disney cruising. Period.
Disney
That-
cruising? All right.
Very specific. Anything that boat, anywhere that boat will go, I'm good with it.
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah, I like cruising. I mean, because you see different things on your trip. So
Yeah.
I would say I like cruising with the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Ooh. Favorite movie would be. I'm just gonna name this one because I watch it every year at the same time. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Every year, that's like it's getting played. I mean,
Why is that? Why is that in rotation?
I'm a huge Christmas guy. I love everything about Christmas. Family, you know, the decorations and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I'm a huge Christmas guy. So you know what? That one and Top Gun. Those are my two favorites.
Why Top Gun?
My military experience as a kid, doing all those different things. I think that's when I fell in love with aviation.
Yeah.
So that I literally can probably quote every line out of that movie. So Top Gun and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Okay. All right. You survived the rapid fire. See, it wasn't too bad.
That wasn't too bad. That wasn't too
I
bad.
told you it's not gonna be too bad.
I can unfold my arms now. And relax.
Right. You know, you got in that stance like I don't know. You better not bring it. You better watch what you ask. But no, the reason why we do rapid fire is because I have a strong belief that we're all humans, and if we meet at the human level first, we can always find commonalities. And a lot of times we never get a chance to talk about those types of things some of those inner things, right? A lot of people, unless you or know me, you don't know those things.
Right.
But to be able to that's a quick place for us to, I like that movie, or yeah, that's my favorite ice cream, or have you tried this, type thing, and we can easily find commonality as we're bridging gaps and growing together as a society.
Absolutely.
So thank you for entertaining me, if
no.
else.
No, it was definitely, it made me think. I'm like, man, what is, normally people just had that stuff just ready to go. And I'm like, I watch so many different things. Like,
yeah,
I'm not just in one genre. So I had to think about it for a second. That's why I came back to the second movie. Because I was like,
gotcha.
that is my favorite. So I appreciate it. Those are great questions.
Yeah. It makes us really stop and think about who we are, right?
Exactly.
And things that we just do, like you said, every year, this is in rotation, but you probably don't think about it. It just happens.
It just happens. It
Yeah.
just happens. It just happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great. I thank you for your time today. Thank you for being a part of the Voices of a Black Man. And I want to give you some time for whatever on your heart that you've not been seen or heard for, or feel like you want to just be heard for, whether it's to a person, a community, society, or the world. I'm going to sit back and let you have the stage.
Okay. Wow. We've actually touched on a variety of topics that are near and dear to me at the moment. The one thing that I will stress right now at this particular moment is we have to be willing to give people space to learn. Um, yes, there are situations, there are people where you really automatically, you know, right from the beginning where they stand, and you know a lot of times that that relationship is recoverable, or if it's even worth your time investing. You know, like, look, this is a lost cause. But more so than not, we have opportunities where we should give people a chance to learn, give people the freedom to make mistakes. You know, somebody makes a mistake, you don't necessarily correct them, but you let them know how you feel, give them a chance to recover or to stay, hey, you know, state their side of the story. Um, for all of the Black men that may see this, my heart's desire is that we get in position. We're not fearful for other people's opinions, because in the end they don't really matter. Um, you know, to my guys that are fathers out there, the only thing that really matters, specifically relates to fatherhood, is your children. So don't be afraid to live in your most authentic self. Let your children know who you are, because 9 chances out of 10, when they get older and start experiencing things and going through things, they're going to get a lot of that from you. And if they never heard you talk about it, they'll think that there's some type of alien, that something's wrong with them, and they'll never have that blueprint where they can go back and say, all right, Dad, well, this is what's going on, and get that help from them. My overarching um, theme for this year has just been community. Um, the news sensationalizes so many different things. It will have you thinking so many negative thoughts about one person versus another person. And I think this particular platform here uh, gives way for these conversations to be had. Um, I hope that everybody tunes in, follows follows this, you know, to get any questions that you can have answered, to listen in. Sometimes you may be lost. Listen in so you can try to locate where you are. It's almost like the map at the mall. Before you can do anything, you got to find out exactly where you are before you can do anything in life. So I'm just super appreciative for this time to be able to share this message. I'm thankful for this platform. I know that's going to go on to help so many people, men and women. And I just really appreciate you for affording me the opportunity to come on here today and just share some thoughts that float between my two ears. So thank you.
Absolutely, Troy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story through your lens. And I'm honored and humbled to have you here today. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've learned some things. You've taken me down memory lane on some things for myself, as well as these conversations. I tell a lot of people these conversations have helped me as just a woman, as a Black woman dealing with Black men, right? Even though I have a father, I have brothers, I've raised Black men, I'm married to a Black man, even though all of that, this time has allowed me to see through a lens that I've never been able to see before.
Wow. Wow.
And so if no one else first, I have greatly enjoyed and learned a lot. And then I know that for our viewers that they are learning a lot through understanding, that you guys, Black men, are not all alike and don't
Right.
have the same experiences and
Right.
don't have the same dreams and aspirations. And no, as you said earlier, not all angry, not aggressive, not saying that those parts aren't there, but those parts are in all of us.
Correct.
All of us have
Correct.
those parts, but it doesn't mean that that's the parts that show. Aren't all not taking care of their kids, aren't all in jail, and
Right.
beating their wives or whatever else may be happening, right?
Right.
Pro-
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Productive members of society,
Yes.
doing good not for just yourself, but contributing to community, contributing to more fathers standing up.
Yes.
So I say all that to say thank you to you and being here today with us.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
All
Now,
right.
to our viewers, I want to say thank you so much for watching The Voices of Black Men and listening to Troy Woods tell his story through his lens. If you want to learn more about this project, or you feel that you're a Black man that wants to speak, you can go to thevoicesofablackman.com. Also, there under the speakers tab, you click on those who have spoken before, and it takes you directly to their interviews as well if you want to look at some more interviews. For all viewers that are here today, you know, this platform is meant to just listen, to see and hear a Black man. Now, the truth is that once you see, hear, and listen, the next part is on you. The next part is for you to check your own biases. Did something come up today, or is something happening inside of your own self that you've never felt before? A bias that you didn't even know was there, but as the conversation happened today, you saw something a little differently through a different lens than you've ever seen before. I encourage you to take action on that, to figure out what that is, why it's there, and then to find ways to get over that bias, right? It may be having other conversations. It may be exactly what Troy said today, is just in the private of your home, using internet to be able to learn more information. So thank you so much for tuning in today. We've got another week to go of this, so I hope that you stay tuned and you continue to tune in 12 noon every single day. We have a Black man telling his story through his lens. My name is CK James, and it is a pleasure being with you today. Hopefully, we'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care. Bye.